Yo, what is good, everybody? It is your boy Golden Falls, Golden What Ifs, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. This is part 1 of 2 of What If Deku had Ultra Ego, and it seems like quite a few of you wanted this What If, or at least I've seen a couple comments about it. Honestly, I've seen comments either being sent to me through messages or through like anything else, right? Through the comment section itself, or also the Discord too. Now, this is definitely something that I've been holding on to for quite a while, because I've been getting these messages for a while now. Not a ton of them, but for a while now, because I feel like this form has been popular for quite a while. Now, with that said, I don't want to waste much more of your time, and I want to get into it. But, of course, some adjustments need to be made for Ultra Ego, but that's obviously a point of, or an idea that a lot of us will understand. Now, with that said, check the links in the description for the Discord, for the Spotify, and or anything else down below, like the membership. And with all that said, I don't want to waste much more of your time, and I want to get right into it. So let's get it. Izuku Midoriya is brought into a world full of superheroes, and these superpowers are known as quirks. And the one thing he's been waiting for is a quirk. And that's exactly what Izuku Midoriya will get. But his quirk is a little bit convoluted, a little bit different, and a little bit confusing. And the reason for this is his quirk isn't as simple as anything that most people would realize. Not only did Izuku's entire kind of stature and his entire demeanor change because of his quirk, but also it changed for other various reasons. For starters, they deemed his quirk something known as ego, or what Izuku will eventually call Ultra Ego. And the quirk itself is built around taking damage, but that's not the only thing. His quirk also allows him to utilize a foreign kind of energy known as ki, which they don't know about at all, but Izuku's able to utilize this ki in various different ways. The ki expands and also has the ability to destroy anything on touch. On top of that, his ability of Ultra Ego gives him the actual ability to fly, super strength, and on top of that, anything else to do with kind of getting stronger while taking damage. And that right there is something that Izuku will have to learn and get a hold of as he progresses throughout his life. And throughout his life, yes, he does get into some interesting altercations, gets into arguments and fights with Bakugo and many others, but it doesn't change the fact that Izuku continues to show that he's pretty damn physically strong, and he can take one hell of a beating and give something back 100x worse. This would lead them to the day where the teacher speaks about them wanting to, or them potentially getting into a specific career. And this career, or career aptitude test kind of gets thrown out the window, because nobody wants to do a normal career. Everybody wants to be a hero. And that's what Izuku wants to be as well, even though his personality is a little bit more primal, you could say. A little bit more wanting for a fight, and a little bit more wanting of an actual brawl. Something that Izuku kind of shows off day in and day out when Bakugo tries to fight or get on his nerves. And, well, when they go head-to-head and they brawl a little bit, Izuku shows that he finds interest in every aspect, and it seems to get stronger after every encounter, at least to a certain extent. For the most part, most of his growing in strength is done right then and there, and most of his kind of involvement in growing in power is more done within the actual fight itself. Now, with all that said, the teacher would talk about this and that, and eventually everybody would be sent home. And as everyone's sent home, Izuku walks under a bridge, and this is when he would have his first encounter with an actual villain, being that of the sludge villain. He would go head to head with the sludge villain pretty damn quickly, and Izuku would want to fight. He would not back up, he would not run away, he would clash with the villain, smacking and punching through this goop-like substance, and the Sludge Villain would be feeling the pressure of these punches, would be feeling the power behind every last kick, every last punch, and every last smack. And it seems as if, well, the Sludge Villain is realizing pretty damn quickly, is realizing pretty damn fast that this kid was probably not the best choice to try to take over. This kid was probably not the best person to choose to try to get away from All Might. And when he turns around, well, he doesn't see a perfect getaway. He sees All Might standing right there, and he sees an eventual defeat right in front of him. A defeat that he cannot do a single thing about, because Izuku Midoriya just put him in a very bad spot to where All Might's gonna defeat him himself, knock him clean out, and obliterate him into small little pieces, leading him to being defeated and leading him to being absolutely destroyed. And that right there, well, that right there is Izuku's first look at what a true hero really is, what a true hero can really do. And, well, Izuku is in complete awe. Yes, he has those primal instincts that allow him and make him want to fight and brawl and scrap. But at the same time, he still has those kind of feelings in the back of his head that he wants to be like All Might, that he wants to make everyone feel safe, but he wants to do it in his own way. And that right there is definitely something that leads him to where he's at right now, and definitely something that allows him to feel a certain way and allows him to feel a specific way about what's going on and what's happening in general. He asks All Might for an autograph and even asks him about this idea of not only him being a hero, but also him eventually becoming even stronger than All Might. He wants to prove to All Might and everyone else that he's even more powerful than him, in which All Might tells him that with a lot of practice, with a lot of work, and a lot of training, he might just get there. There's a good chance he does, and he wishes the kid the best and hopes to see him in the future in terms of going to maybe UA or something along those lines. In which Izuku says that he's going to UA. He's going to be the top student, and he can believe that 100%. In which, of course, All Might says, you know what, I expect the most from it, and he'll be seeing him soon. In which All Might would take the Sludge Villain and leave before anything else would even occur and anything else would happen in general. And now, well, it is time for Izuku Midoriya to spend the next 10 months studying, going to school, and also training for the UA entrance exam. And here's the thing about the UA entrance exam. His preparation is very fruitful, because Izuku during this time, yes, he does know about his ability to have raw just strength, his ability to take damage and get stronger, but what he doesn't know is his ability to use something known as the Hakai. And that right there is something he needs to get a hold of, because when he starts trying to actually use this kind of interesting power that lays dormant within him, a power that it feels like can be surged to the surface, he starts messing with it, utilizing it, trying to figure it out, and eventually he would figure it out just a tiny, literally a tiny little bit. And when he would utilize it, conjuring up something in front of him, conjuring up a blast in front of him, as he does this, Izuku would Hakai a tree out of existence, making it eviscerate into nothingness, and Izuku would stand there with his mouth wide open in shock, thinking that he just did that. He just poofed that thing out of existence. That thing used to be a tree. It used to be standing there. It used to sap water. It used to do everything a normal tree would do, and now it's just gone. And he realizes that that attack, that ability, is scary. It scares him in a way. Yes, a part of him loves the thrill of the fight, loves the ability to fight, loves the idea of fighting and kind of taking on foe after foe. But the feeling of pure destruction, the feeling scares him because he gets enjoyment from it. And that scares him more than anything. But Izuku knows that if he can figure out how to use this properly, how to use this aspect just well enough, it might help him in everything he does. It might help him in everything that he gets a hold of. So he walks around and finds little bits of trash at a beach, known as Dagobah Beach. And he begins to put his hand on one of them, trying to destroy or Hakai them out of existence. And as he does this right here is something that is pretty damn extraordinary and pretty damn interesting for Izuku, because he continues to do this, clearing up the entirety of the beach with Hakai after Hakai, learning how to utilize it at a smaller scale as much as he possibly can. Now, he doesn't have full control over it. There's still aspects that pretty much scare him. There's times where he'll try to Hakai one thing, but he'll Hakai multiple things. And that right there is not okay. He needs to figure those things out, because the last thing he'd want is to hurt somebody on accident while not being able to utilize the power to its fullest. Now, with all that said, the progression eventually leads him to the UA entrance exam, and this would lead him to not only taking a written portion, but a portion where he takes on a ton of robots. Another place for him to actually utilize his Hakai ability and utilize any ability he can. And these robots are easy as anything for Izuku, because Izuku makes them look like a joke. I mean, Izuku continues to literally just walk around, place a hand on a robot and Hakai it out of existence, point after point after point, leading to him destroying a vast amount of robots, and then eventually leads him to actually facing off with a 0-point robot. And when someone was unsafe, when someone needed help by the name of Ochaku Uraraka, he would go over there, and instead of just Hakaiing the rubble off of her, just in case he doesn't want to hurt anybody, he goes up flying right at the giant robots and sends a blast toward it that would ensue a Hakai on a robot the size of a building, and he would destroy it into dust, obliterating it into nothingness. And just like that, the robot would be gone. And everybody watching would think to themselves that they just might have the next All Might level of power on their hands. And this is amazing. This might be the best thing that's ever happened to UA in a very long time. They think that student after student that comes by, it seems like they get better and better, but this kid seems to be unordinary in terms of how much better he has gotten, or how much better this new group of students truly is, and that massively includes Izuku Midoriya. Now, after all this is said and done, he eventually waits for, obviously, the end of the UA entrance exam, and then eventually waits for his letter. He gets his letter and is told that he is the #1 student, something that he knew and said he was going to do, something that he said without a shadow of a doubt he would get done. And you can call it cockiness, you can call it what you want, but he guaranteed it, and well, it was the reality. He got to the point that he wanted to, and he was able to do exactly what he wanted to do, and that was be the #1 student and be in Class 1A. And that's exactly what Izuku Midoriya got done, and Izuku Midoriya enters Class 1A at the very top. But before you know it, they would get a chance to show off their own abilities in a quirk assessment test. A quirk assessment test that would be really spearheaded by Aizawa himself. Because Aizawa believes that he believes that they don't need any more affirmations. They don't need any more, oh, your guys are so amazing and this and that. Orientation is useless. Really, what they should do is get straight to work, and that's exactly what he does with his students. He immediately gets them straight to work, because he basically tells them that they have to go through various different assessments, and one of those assessments is to start with a ball throw. And Izuku, being that he has a pretty damn insane raw strength and power, he's able to, for the most part, actually destroy this ball throw, launching it almost into space itself. But Izuku's really never worked on his true raw strength. And it's not like he's getting beat up and then throwing the ball, which would ensue in a large gap in strength added to whatever else he can possibly do. But in terms of how good he does in this assessment, he easily does better than everyone else. His speed outclasses so many of them. His ability to move and his strength and all of the above gives him such a massive upper hand, leading to him blowing away every single person that is in the assessment. And yes, the last person does quote unquote get expelled, but the very next day they would see where they come from, and the very next day they would see that, well, it was all kind of a ruse to a certain extent. But that very next day they also would have training with the one and only All Might, and All Might would be actually running a heroes versus villains like training session, or a test in some sorts. First, you have Ochaku Araka and Izuku Midoriya on the hero team, and the other team is Bakugo and Tanya Ida. These two teams are separated by heroes versus villains, being that Izuku is the hero. Their whole goal, literally their whole goal, is to actually basically touch the bomb, kind of getting it out of the way and being able to, for the most part, capture it in a sense. Now, they have to get through this entire place, but Izuku basically tells Ochako that Bakugo will run down and try his best to fight, give his little hissy fit, because that is what he's done their entire life. And he tells her that all she has to do is find the place and make it pretty known where it is. It doesn't matter if Tenya knows. It doesn't matter if anyone else kind of figures out what she's doing. It will be just fine, because Bakugo will be handled in a pretty quick succession, and probably before she even gets up the first flight of stairs, in which she asks, like, how can he be so confident? But he says that she'll see very soon, because when they would break out and they would go to take on Bakugo and Tenya Ida, it seems as if everything he said was 1000% the truth. Because when he goes over there and Bakugo comes surging down that staircase, Izuku handles him in just 3 moves. In a matter of a split second, Izuku outclasses and makes Bakugo look silly. And he tells him at the very end of it, and he asks him more specifically, did he even train? Did he even prepare? And did he even get ready? Because this, well, doesn't seem like it. And he captures Bakugo, taping him up, and then heads upstairs to find Ochako, who's actually not too far away, and they both run through the area, finding the room where Tenya's basically trying to cover the bomb. But of course, Izuku's speed is a little bit too overwhelming, and Ochako and Izuku overwhelm him quickly and defeat Tenya Ida to touch the bomb, so they pass the heroes versus villains exam. And after this exam, they basically are, and obviously, basically put on a pedestal from All Might. All Might says how good and well they did and this and that, and how Izuku is very straight to the point, and it's good that he's not drawing out different fights. In which Izuku says that he loves the fight. He does. But honestly, Bakugo just doesn't give him the fight that he would even desire, and frankly, the only person that would even do that is probably All Might himself. And he decides that he doesn't really want to draw out a fight that would just be a yawn fest, and one that wouldn't even give him the thrill of being injured at all. In which All Might hears this and thinks, yeah, I mean, this kid's pretty damn powerful, but in a way has some pretty scary tendencies, so they're going to have to keep an eye on him for sure, because he feels and seems a little bit egotistical. Now, with all that said, Izuku would then watch with everyone else the rest of the kind of training sessions, you could say, and Izuku would eventually kind of await the eventual training session at the USJ. They would take a bus there, and the USJ wouldn't be too far away, but it would be far enough to where they actually have to take a little bit of a drive, even though it is still within the UA borders. And as they arrive, they're met by Pro Hero 13, and Izuku just listens as they walk up. And as all of them are talking, everything's happening, Izuku just awaits further instructions, thinking that this probably will help him in the long run. But eventually, portals would open up and villains would pour in, and Izuku would realize that the USJ is getting invaded, and on top of that, somebody, doesn't know who, teacher, faculty member, or even student, betrayed them and has given them information that they wouldn't have known in the first place. And Izuku looks toward Aizawa as Aizawa jumps into the feat of action, and let's be honest, Izuku doesn't hesitate at all because he wants a fight just as bad as he ever has. So he jumps in to help Aizawa and begins beating on villains and destroying them every single chance he possibly gets. I mean, he goes in there and he knocks out villain after villain. Don't worry, he doesn't, end their lives or anything like that, but he goes head to head with those villains, and he realizes that a lot of them, they're a bunch of jokes. They're honestly not that important. They're not that useful, and it seems like, well, they're really nothing to write home about. But eventually a portal would open up as the last villains are getting knocked out, and Aizawa watches as Shigaraki goes to grab Izuku by the face. And that's exactly what he does. Izuku's eyes grow wide, but Aizawa cancels the quirk of Shigaraki, and he tells Izuku to move away now, but Izuku grabs the arm of Shigaraki and slings him through the portal and slams him on the ground. He tells Aizawa to keep the quirk canceled and tells him that, well, if he can't do it anymore, let him know as well. Aizawa tells him to back up, that there's no need to fight and that he shouldn't be fighting, but then Aizawa realizes there's no choice here at the moment. Not only is Izuku not listening, wanting to fight more and more, but on top of that, he knows that Izuku might just be the best choice of action for them to minimize any casualties. Izuku would grab Shigaraki by the face, grind him into the ground, and then slam him over and over again, brutalizing Shigaraki, brutalizing the leader of the League of Villains to a large extent, leading to him calling for the Nomu, and Izuku takes a punch from the Nomu, sending him flying. Aizawa's in shock, looking at him, asking if he's okay, but Izuku would stand up as his aura would flare a purplish pink, and as it does, Izuku tells them that they really shouldn't have done that, as he wipes off the blood from his face and he spits on the ground and asks the big monster if that's all he's got. And he charges at the monster, punching and kicking and going blow for blow with the monster over and over again, taking punches from the Nomu and delivering punches even harder back. And it seems like the powers of Ultra Ego are in full effect. And let's just say this, Aizawa is watching very intently, and Aizawa is watching very closely at what Izuku is doing. Not only is he going head to head with this thing, but he's beating it. He begins to obliterate it. Boom, punch after punch. And of course, Shigaraki and Kurogiri try to help, but no help is able, eventually leading to All Might arriving to even land a punch of his own straight to the Nomu and sending it into the ground. Izuku would land a kick to its head, and he would look toward All Might as he picks up the Nomu, throwing it up, and All Might would then punch it with a Detroit smash right back into the ground. Shigaraki and Kurogiri are in shock, thinking they need to get the hell out of there. But out of nowhere, Bakugo would grab Kurogiri and begin to explode him on his metal kind of gear, or his metal armor. And Shigaraki's quirk and Kurogiri's quirk is being messed with Aizawa himself. And Izuku picks up the Nomu, and as he does, the Nomu would grab at his head, and Izuku would begin to basically Hakai it, destroying its arms entirely, as the Hakai would eventually get to the rest of its body and he would incinerate into nothingness, in which Izuku would be honestly smiling and would be in a weird state, a state that a lot of people would question is, or would ask themselves if it's very heroic, and All Might asks what he just did, and he says that he handled a monster, a being that was no longer human, and a being that was no longer, well, a living true creature, in which, of course, they don't know that for sure what that thing was, but All Might realizes that the kid did what he thought was best, and that he decided to obliterate it, or Hakai it, destroying it entirely, every last molecule, every last little bit, completely and utterly incinerated, in which this would shock Shigaraki and Kurogiri even more than they thought before. But they wonder, what is this kid? What can he truly do? And what else could he possibly do? This right here, this is too much. This is too much for them to even think about. How could they do anything, and what could they do? And well, Shigaraki and Kurogiri try to leave, but as a portal would open up, Shigaraki would get shot up by a bunch of bullets, and then out of nowhere, other heroes would surge in to stop them from actually leaving. And Kurogiri would try to help, but with Aizawa there and many others kind of converging, it seems like they don't even have enough time to even react, and they are brought into custody quicker than you would think. And it seems as if the person that told All For One about what was happening and the League of Villains about what was happening, they left out too many details, especially the details of someone like Izuku Midoriya. Now, of course, they do have a talking with Izuku. They tell him, like, you know, and question him about what he did and blah, blah, blah. And he gets in a little bit of trouble, but he's luckily he didn't kill anybody that was, you know, an actual person, in which Izuku says that he would never do that. He would never end the life of somebody that is, well, like an actual person. He did it to a monster that could not be saved. And eventually they do kind of look at the footage again and realize that that is kind of the truth. The monster itself seemed to really be, well, just that, a monster, seemingly having no human-like qualities, but they won't know that until they get a little bit more information on what those things even are. And well, and if they actually run into another one of them. They're hoping they don't, but the reality is they got to be prepared for the worst. So if they do run into one, they're going to have to do some testing to figure out what the hell those things are in the first place. But that's not the job of Izuku Midoriya. He heads off, and after a couple days of rest and some training and this and that, they all head off to the UA Sports Festival, in which Izuku gives a bit of a speech saying that he's excited to fight, excited to train, and excited to take on whoever and whatever is thrown his way, and he promises to be the last one standing, leading to Izuku kind of getting cheers, but then a mix of cheers and boos at the same time, believing that, or a lot of people believing that he has a little too big of an ego. And as this happens and as all this occurs, eventually Midnight announces that the first thing in the UA Sports Festival is the obstacle course race. And Izuku handles this very easily, flying off very quickly past everyone, and some people can somewhat keep up, but for the most part, Izuku is out of there. He is zooming, he is gone, and he flies across the entire area. And yes, he finishes first in that kind of test, in that obstacle course race. And then the same thing would happen in the cavalry battle when he teams up with Tokiyami, Meihatsume, and Ochaku Uraraka. And as they team up and as they fend off other people, well, frankly, not many people, because almost every single person there has heard rumors about Izuku and are deathly terrified of him. And frankly, he doesn't really care, right? If you don't want to fight and you don't want to give him a good fight, he doesn't give an F in the first place. But if you just want to, be scared and be timid and hide away from him, so be it. he does not give an absolute F, because all he cares about is a thrilling fight, a fight that somebody could give him that would make him hurt. And that is, messed up in many different ways. But on the contrary as well, is something he only directs toward villains. So that is good to an extent, right? That is very good that he doesn't necessarily point that in the direction of heroes unless it's some friendly sparring or a friendly fight that he wants to get into, like one that he wants against All Might. But that's not going to happen, at least not for now. Now, after all that is said and done, we go to the 1 versus 1s, in which Izuku smiles widely, thinking, yeah, this is the absolute end, right? This is over. And Izuku is mouthing off, talking all this smack, but then before you know it, he goes against Hitoshi Shinso, in which Shinso eliminates him. How exactly? Well, Izuku doesn't realize it, but when he responds to a question Shinso says, he walks straight out and straight onto the ground, being eliminated. And this would piss him off. It would. It would make him so freaking mad, to the point where there was something nearby that he just Hakkai'd, destroying into nothingness. But then he calms down just a little bit and hops back up on the stage and walks toward him quickly. And as he walks towards Shinso, everyone's a little scared, like, oh shoot, like what is he gonna do? And then he puts his hand out. He shakes his hand and says that he got the better of him, and that he respects that, and that one day they're gonna fight once again, and he won't lose again. And when Shinso shakes his hand firmly and nods his head, and he tells him that he got him this time, but he's sure he won't get him again, but he respects that at least he's not a sore loser. In which Izuku shrugs his shoulders, and he's like, I'm a little sore about it. But other than that, he wishes him the best and tells him that whatever he's after, he better go F and get it. And that's exactly what Izuku would want from somebody else, right? Especially someone that defeated him. Izuku would walk away and everybody would ask him how he did that, what happened, did he just do that on purpose? In which Izuku shakes his head and says no, but he's not going to give away the guy's secrets. That'd be really stupid. And he wants to see him go far and do a little bit of something. In which Shinso, let's be honest, doesn't really do that much after defeating Izuku, but Izuku does get a nice slice of humble pie from this, realizing that sometimes it's best to shut your damn mouth. And he realizes that that's something to keep into consideration, especially for the future. And maybe situational awareness on the battlefield is also very important, especially when all you want to do is fight. But even with all that said, Izuku gets a lot of offers from agencies, especially from very, very high level agencies as well. Now, he would also obviously watch as Bakugo would be the one to, be the number one student, right? Because he would win all of the UA Sports Festival. And of course, this would piss Izuku off to an extent, because he's like, really, like, I obviously would have defeated Bakugo. Like, it would have been no trouble. But of course, he's got to swallow his pride just a little bit and take this one on the chin, especially when Bakugo starts talking all that crap, starts saying this and starts saying that. And he's like, you know what? Whatever. I got to take this one on the chin, and I'm going to live with it. Which is pretty good character development for Izuku Midoriya, because he's been pretty damn, you could say cocky or even egotistical to a large extent. But he has an agency to get a hold of and get into, which is going to be involving internships. And the internship that actually makes him want to join the most is a top hero. Actually, a top hero that is pretty well known to a large extent, known as Best Jeanist. Now, he goes there, and what he's not expecting is to see Bakugo there. Yeah, he sees Bakugo. Yes, Katsuki Bakugo. And it's kind of crazy because Izuku wasn't necessarily expecting Bakugo to be there, but it seems like Best Genius actually gave them both the opportunity to join because he saw that they both had, you could say, anger issues. Now, is that a bit of an understatement? Yeah, definitely a bit of an understatement, but that is the truth. They both have some pretty bad anger issues, even if, Izuku's anger, is a little bit different than Bakugo's anger himself. Now, with all that said, though, Izuku does gain quite a bit of knowledge from this. Like, he kind of puts aside the ego, puts aside the kind of anger and whatever else is blocking him, and he really listens to Best Genius. Anything that he says, anything that he believes, and Best Genius's whole idea is to whip these two into shape, but honestly, whipping Bakugo into shape, let's just say that's not very possible. But in terms of getting Izuku to really lock in on what he wants in life and what he wants from this hero journey, that right there is definitely possible. And he was able to do it to a large extent. Now, is aspects of Izuku still there where he wants a fight? Like, he wants that thrill? I mean, of course. That's not leaving Izuku, but he basically teaches Izuku to basically channel it properly and know when to hold back, know when to hold that back. And as long as he figures that out, he'll be a great hero. But before you know it, the phone would ring, a phone calling from UA. And it would be shocking because Best Genius's face would drop in seriousness, especially after a bit of, banter, making fun of both the boys. And after making fun of him a little bit and then answering a call, he would tell them that they got to go back to UA, and he can't tell them why. In which Izuku is a little bit stunned by this, thinking that something must have happened pretty bad. And what they would realize is when they arrive back, that's exactly what happened. Someone got really hurt, borderline on death's door, and that is Tenya Ida. Everybody there is in shock. And Izuku's just thinking that if he could get his hands on that piece of garbage, he would destroy him. In which then it would lock back into what Best Genius has said, and that's basically staying calm, staying resilient, but also staying focused is just as important. And Izuku tells even his whole class that they have to really honor what this means and honor Tenya Ida. So they need to be even better than what they were. In which Aizawa would nod his head and say that the kid is right, and that's exactly what they're going to be. Because they have a final exam coming up right now, in which Izuku prepares for that written portion, prepares for the practical, and he would finally get his chance to take on All Might himself. And yes, it would be a fun one. Izuku would be smiling and having fun the entire time, but he would think about the words that Best Genius has said in the back of his head, taking things more seriously, realizing that he can have the enjoyment of the thrill, but also focus in on what he needs to get done. And Izuku would lead him to finding openings on All Might that he didn't know really were there, and eventually leading him to landing a punch right on All Might's injury that he didn't even know about, right? He didn't even know about it. But he would land the punch there, putting All Might down, and then eventually wrapping him with capture tape, realizing that All Might is basically hurt, but to an extent doesn't want All Might to kind of push himself any further than he has to. And a one-on-one with All Might and defeating him is something that all the students and many other faculty members weren't necessarily expecting, especially when they watch closely at Izuku's kind of aura continue to charge more and more as he fights longer and longer with All Might. And All Might would eventually stand up and shake his hand and tell him, "Thanks, I'm glad you went a little easy on me at the end," in which Izuku says that he's learned something from a top hero that tells him basically to know your battles, pick your battles, and understand that just because you enjoy fighting doesn't mean you can't enjoy it, but also you got to know when to get the job done and not put others in danger as well. In which All Might nods his head and says whoever told him that, they're very smart. Very, very smart. In which Izuku nods his head and he would head off. But he looks back at All Might and says that one of these days he wants a full-fledged fight. And he wants to see him at his 100%. And Izuku would leave not knowing that that fight will never happen. That fight could never happen. And at the end of the day, All Might's days of his glory days, being at 100%, being the strongest he's ever been, they're over. And they've been gone for a very long time. But this would lead them to the forest training camp. A camp that would allow them to train their powers and hone their skills. And they would be there without actually any intervention, without any fights and intervening. It would be 2 weeks of just flat out training and getting stronger, and or a week or two of doing this. And as they get more powerful and as Izuku gets a grasp and more control over his Hakai abilities or his destruction-like abilities, he continues to flourish in strength more and more and more. And eventually they would arrive back in the city, arrive back in the normal areas, and before you know it, there would be a villain attack of a multitude of Nomus. Nomu after Nomu after Nomu scouring the streets, while All Might and All for One fight above, fighting and clashing and smashing each other, smacking and punching each other over and over again as they basically go one-on-one for their final battle. But it seems like All for One has no intention of leaving this to be one-on-one and no intentions of allowing All Might to have a fight that is fair. So out of nowhere, this giant monstrous creature would stumble in and crash into All Might himself, sending him spiraling through multiple buildings. This monstrous creature, would be Gigantomachia, and All for One would stand next to it and pat it on its head and basically tell it that he did good and that it's now his time to finish the job. Of course, Izuku and many others are watching this, asking Aizawa what they should do. They need to help him, in which of course Aizawa would look at Izuku and then look back and then look right back at Izuku, and Izuku would be already gone, flying directly towards the location of Gigantomachia and All for One to help All Might. He flies in, and as Gigantomachia is going to stomp on All Might, he would then land a crucial blow, pushing the monstrous creature over, and he would smash into it and tell All Might to finish the job of defeating All for One. He would then fight Gigantomachia one-on-one, being the kind of tank or this front liner for everyone that's around, every hero. And everybody watches thinking that they can't believe this. That's a kid. That's a student at UA High School doing all of this. He's clashing and crashing into Gigantomachia, and he thinks to himself, this would be so easy. All it takes is one Hakai. But he can tell the creature isn't what everyone thinks it is. He can tell the creature is under duress to an extent, and the creature itself is living. It's living, it's breathing, it's real, and he doesn't want to destroy him. He doesn't want to kill it. But the more he fights, the more Izuku enjoys it, because he continues to get smacked around and get stronger and stronger to the point where he is laying punches punches and attacks as strong as Gigantomachia, clashing and crashing into him over and over again, leading to Izuku's whole body being bloody, bruised, and beat up. But luckily, with all the help from other heroes, they eventually lead Gigantomachia into like this kind of pheromones of midnight, leading to Gigantomachia being held down by Izuku. And also with the help of Best Genius and many other heroes, they hold the monstrous creature down just as All Might would finish the job, knocking out and obliterating, at least kind of obliterating him unconscious, All for One. And with one United States of Smash would finish the job, knocking out All For One, and they would have time to defeat Gigantomachia, knocking him out and putting him to sleep just for now until they can actually, well, get him under proper surveillance and control and also imprisonment. But Izuku stands there with his fist held high, just like All Might, and he laughs, putting the fist down as All Might does his thing, with obviously them recording him and pointing directly at the screen. Izuku would collapse to the ground as the other heroes, more specifically Best Jeanist, would come over and grab him and pick him up, taking him away to a nearby hospital. Izuku laughs and asks him if he did good, in which Best Jeanist says that they're going to be talking about his little heroic stunts, but just between them two, he did good. In which Izuku is knocked out for days, going through a brutal fight with Gigantomachia, or All For One's little pet. But the awakening of Izuku, well, we're going to have to wait until the next part, where he's going to wake up and has to continue his hero journeys as we continue through My Hero Academia. But of course, if you guys enjoyed this part 1 of 2, then make sure to show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this version of kind of the way I want to go through My Hero Academia. I felt like, hey, like this is a cool little where I'm adding a little bit of story elements, but also some other elements where I'm a little faster pace and stuff like that. I feel like there's not a ton of unnecessary talking or unnecessary kind of story elements. Sometimes I do that, and I will admit, and I know some of you don't really like that. Some of you like that a lot. It's kind of a mix of people, but I kind of like this style where I want to try to mix in story elements, but also have quicker paced, quicker paced arcs and stuff like that don't really need to be talked about that much, and really don't need to be kind of talked about to a lengthy extent. But with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.